Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Building Stellar Kid Skills. My name is Martha. I work on the Alexa team and I will be your moderator today. This webinar is being recorded and we will share the recording with you afterward. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. If you are having any technical issues, you can use the chat section on your control panel to talk to our technical support. We will be taking your questions throughout the webinar, and you can submit yours by typing them into the questions pane on the control panel. Please feel free to submit that at any time, and we will try to address them throughout the webinar. When you leave the webinar, we'll ask you to fill out a quick survey. It should take no more than 30 seconds to complete and will help us deliver more of the content that you find most useful. So please send us your feedback, and thank you in advance. As I mentioned, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted later on our website. We will send you the link via email and we'll also post it on our social channels. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook at Alexa Devs. Before I introduce our presenters, I would like to kick off with a short poll. There are just 3 questions. Here's the first question. Have you built an Alexa skill before? Your choices are yes, no, no, but I intend to, and what's an Alexa skill? Great, I see your answers coming in. Thank you. I see that most of you so far have built a skill before. If you haven't chimed in yet, please do so now. Okay, question number 2. Do you plan on building a kid skill? Okay, your choices are yes, maybe no. Give us your answers, and then we'll move on to question number 3. Last question. Do you plan on participating in the Alexa Skills Challenge? Tell us your answer. Your choices are yes, no, I haven't decided yet. Great, we see your answers coming in. Great, and it looks like most of you plan to participate in the challenge. That's great news. Now I would like to introduce our speakers, our evangelists Paul Cutzinger and Cami Williams. Paul and Cami are hosts. Take it away.
All righty.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, I'm Cami.
No, you're not.
I'm Paul.
I'm Cami.
We're really excited that you're here. This is going to be really fun. So it sounds like a bunch of you are, excuse me, a bunch of you are aware of and here for the Skills Challenge. Let's talk a little bit about it for all those who are not. A couple things about this. There's a $250,000 cash prize, and the deadline for submissions is January 10th.
A lot of time to build a kid skill.
Yeah, I think it's important to have that amount of time, right? So you can build a few things out, get some things going, try it out on some friends, and do a little beta testing maybe even.
Yeah.
It's really cool. So a couple things. One is you can tell that there's a lot of prizes. There's 1,000 prizes. We're really trying to help a lot of people get into this and get some experience. One of our goals with all of these things is to see what you do, see how you experiment, but also get you daydreaming about the next thing and the next thing.
Oh, yeah.
So we really want to make sure you get in there, give it a try. A lot of folks are going to win, and a few of you won't. That's okay.
That's okay, but a lot of you will, which is the important part. Stay positive.
Right, that's right. There has to be a little challenge, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's keep rolling. We're gonna spend most of the time talking about ways to build really interesting, compelling kids skills. And then we're also going to do a little live coding near the end and into the next hour,
Yeah.
so you can see some stuff going on.
Yeah. Those kinds of skills are the ones that will do well in this challenge.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm particularly excited that you're here. I think this is a really interesting time in history in a weird way. It seems like every decade or so, there's a new way to interact with computing. And just 10 years ago was when you started interacting with touch on your phones.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm particularly excited about this particular challenge and all of your interest is because I think kids are more open to what the future could be than adults are.
Yeah.
So let me give you an example of that. A while ago, I had this is longer than I would like to think, I guess. I went to my niece's house, and I had a camera, like an actual camera with a lens on it and not a phone. Have you ever seen one of those?
No.
No? Yeah. So anyway, I had one of those, and I took it there, and my 2-year-old niece started touching the screen. She wanted to see
funny.
a thing. And my camera it wasn't a touch screen.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, you have to use these little arrows and this button to select the picture. And it was like the concept of direct manipulation really just is natural, where you just touch something and does it. Another example is when you're scrolling a web page with a scroll bar, which was the previous, like 20 years ago model, with a mouse, you scroll the scroll bar down and the page goes up. Because you're like moving your cursor, and right? And you're like changing where your cursor is relative to the page. But with touch, you touch the paper and you move it down. Of course, it would be weird if the paper went up as your finger went down. So this concept of direct manipulation was really important. And so my point in all of that is touch brings this very natural experience. And if we fast forward back to today, so does voice. And the thing that I'm excited about is a lot of adults have been trained on how to use voice.
Right.
They've got phone systems where they're like, operator, press 2, right? All those kinds of things. And they've got a lot of experience with touch and mobile and web.
But they're all robotic.
They're all robotic.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this to me is a particular opportunity for all of you to build a more conversational experience and have kids just dive in and try it and be willing to explore. The other is it's a little bit of a burden because you all are the pioneers here. Like, you are the folks that are going to figure out what voice is over the course of the next decade.
Right.
And so if you all build stuff that's very robotic, that's what voice will be. But if you all embrace this whole, like, what could it be like to be very natural and
go against the status quo, essentially.
right?
Yeah.
And just be free. And so I think with this challenge, we're sort of, in a way, together, us and you, kicking off this experience with children who will define the future. And so, all right, maybe that's big and lofty. I don't know, but
No, it was perfect.
that's why I'm excited.
Yeah.
Okay. So, by the way, we have a few kinds of devices.
Really cool devices.
Yeah, there's the Echo Spot is the one there with the little round picture
that one's
on it.
my favorite. It's cute.
Is it cute?
Yeah.
I like it too. It's kind of, it's, you know, for like your bedside, you can see what's going on, or on your desk. It's a nice little desk piece. The Echo Plus has a hub built in, and then the new Echo is a little shorter, has like a fabric outside and stuff like that. We show these devices. One, we think they're good and cool and interesting, but really they're more about the reference hardware, the far field microphone arrays and things like that. The reality is there are many, many devices, and many people are building things. They're putting them into cars and clocks.
Yeah, and you can actually build things too. You can add Alexa to your voice-enabled gadgets, which is awesome.
The thing I love about all of this is that Alexa can be everywhere, and you can sort of get to this sort of dream of ambient computing and the Star Trek computer and all that. Okay, so let's get into the kids stuff.
Yeah.
There's
the nitty-gritty.
The nitty-gritty. All right. The first thing is you need to consider the age range here, and designing for kids is different. So if you're thinking about designing for an adult, you might be thinking about a 20-year-old, a 40-year-old, a 60-year-old, and they're all maybe a little different but relatively similar. A 3-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 16-year-old,
very different.
Way different.
Leaps and bounds different.
Right. So think about that range, and you can think about that at every level of your skill, every phase of your skill. Like, for example, just the name. So there's a lot of skills out there about animal sounds.
Right.
So by the way, there's a lot of skills out there about animal sounds. You probably don't need to go build that one. Think of something new. But if you were to make a tweak to that and call it bird sounds,
Suddenly it's harder.
Suddenly
more
it's harder,
difficult.
right.
Yeah.
right, and that changes the age range. You're probably not going to do what's the difference between a macaw and a yellow canary. I don't know. I don't know what the birds are. An eagle. I know an eagle.
Yeah.
For kids, for really young kids, but maybe for older kids, that'd be awesome.
Mhm.
Okay. The other concept here is to think about leveling.
Right.
So one of the things you want to be able to do is let kids get in and have an experience where they can succeed. At the same time, you want it to be a challenge. So one of the people I used to work with, his name is Raph Koster, and he wrote this book called The Theory of Fun. And he was also he was one of the designers for Ultima Online. It's like an MMO back in the day.
Yeah.
Sort of kicked it all off. Anyway, he has this analogy for fun that's really stuck with me. And that is, imagine a game like tic-tac-toe. And it's a great game because you get the rules very quickly and you immediately have this feeling of like, ooh, I could beat you.
Mhm.
I could win at this game. And that sense of I could win adds a lot of fun to it. And then you get playing, you get doing stuff, and pretty soon you always tie.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's repetitive too.
And yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the moment when you're kind of done.
Mhm.
And the reason you're kind of done is because all of a sudden there's no challenge.
Right.
And so you want to have the sense of, I think I can win, but there's a real chance I'll fail.
Mhm.
If you contrast that with chess, in the beginning, it's kind of overwhelming because you don't actually think you can win. You don't even know what the pieces are, what they're named, and how they move. But once you learn the basics of it, then you're like, ooh, I think I can win, I think I can move. And so chess has a much longer lifespan for fun.
Right. Yeah, and that's a testament to the types of skills that you can build for kids. You know, if you think about tic-tac-toe, for example, it's a quick win skill or just a quick utility skill. Younger kids would tend to enjoy that more, while older kids might like a little bit more of a challenge or a little bit more utility. So if you think like with older kids, they could use skills more for homework or academics with regards to education or for entertainment. You know, Minecraft is very, very popular and it can be a very simple or complex game. So kind of creating these different caveats within your skill, I think, are important and things to consider when contemplating what age you want to target or multiple ages you want to target.
All right, I want to pause for just a second and make sure technical things are all working. Everybody can see they're hearing an echo. That's all, not an echo. Everything's good. Okay.
Okay.
Sweet. Then we're going to keep on rolling then. All right. Cool. Let's move on then.
Okay.
Doo-doo-doo. Mousy, give focus. There we go. The next one is about fostering the sense of curiosity and exploration. What I love about kids is they're kind of fearless and they just want to go do stuff. And that's a great time for skill builders. And what you want to do is make it so that they have the ability to do that. If you build a skill that's way too constrained and too narrow, then they won't be able to explore and do things.
Yeah, you want to pique their imagination in a sense with the skill.
So we have a couple techniques for doing that. One is dialogue management. And so dialogue management is this, let's think about a conversation for a second. We'll kind of break it down.
Sure.
Like for example, let's say we're gonna play like a explore the castle kind of a game. And I'll be like, open the drawbridge, and you'd be Alexa.
Opening the drawbridge.
Sound effects, I like that, I like that. And then that would be a prompt for me to say, ooh, I'm gonna go into the castle.
Right.
And so there's this back and forth of like what the customer says, what the child says, and what Alexa says. And so you have the system of prompts and responses.
Right.
And as a part of that, you want to be gathering bits of information. Like if you say open the chest versus open the door, you want to know if they're saying chest or door so you know how to respond in your game.
Right. Or for example, if they're maybe, I don't know, describing what kind of pet they want to have.
Yeah.
They could say they want a dog, but they could also say, I want a small dog, or I want a fluffy dog, or I want a dog that will cuddle with me at night.
Right.
And keeping track of all of those attributes is important.
Right, so dog might be one thing you keep track of, and then cuddly is a separate thing.
Right.
Small, yeah.
Because kids, they can also get easily frustrated or discouraged, and so it's important to keep track of what they say. So if you say, what type of animal do you want? And they say, I want a big dog, and then you say, how what size of dog do you want? Like
Right,
that's a very frustrating experience, and
I
that's
just
a
told
way.
you. Right.
Yeah, that's a way where kids can be like, oh no, it's my fault, I messed up, but no, it's something that you as the developer should catch.
That's right.
Mhm.
Now, that can sound very complicated to build
Right.
because you've got to keep track of a bunch of state and all these other things.
Mhm.
But we have a capability called dialogue management that will effectively handle all of that for you. So what you do is you say, here's the dialogue I want to have, and here are the characteristics or the fields. We call them slots. The slots I want to collect. Like
you're looking
in your
for.
example, it was size and animal,
Mhm.
so forth. And then you can sort of delegate that experience to Alexa, and she'll gather all the information for you. And when she's got it all, she'll bring it back to your code and say, here's what I found out.
Yeah.
And then you can go do stuff with your code. So there's a couple examples out there that we have for dialogue management. And in fact, Cami will show you a skill in a few minutes that has some characteristics of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really great when you incorporate those slots. You can actually create custom slots, or we have built-in slots as well. So for example, we were talking about animals. We have a built-in animal slot, so that way you don't have to think of every single animal that is in existence. But if you wanted to create your own custom slot that had mythical creatures, and they were creatures that you made up yourself, like, I don't know, a spotted penguin or something. That's something that you could incorporate into your skill, which is really awesome.
Right? You didn't say dragons or
Dragons. Yeah, I don't know why I thought of
You're
a
like,
penguin.
I can only think of penguins. Those are so
Yep.
mythical. I get it. I get it. What is your favorite animal?
That's like a deep personal question.
Right?
Yeah, can we get back to that?
I was thinking about this actually. I don't know why I dreamt about this very question last night.
Really? What's your favorite
when-
animal?
Antlion.
Okay.
Well, I mean, just think of all the drama that's just in the name of the animal, right?
Yeah.
You've got antlion. What is it? Is it like a little tiny lion?
Or is
Or
it
is
a
it
giant ant?
a giant ant,
that
right?
growls.
So there's all this drama, right?
Yeah.
So I like that about it. And then once you learn what they really are, and like they burrow and they have these traps that they make, you're like, those guys are clever. And then you realize, oh, this is just like the creature in Star Wars where he eats
Never
Boba
seen
Fett.
Star Wars.
Okay, we should move on.
Yeah, we should move on.
All right. Let's go to this. Guide kids through the interactions. All right. So there's a few things here. You know, you want this sense of curiosity and exploration that we've been talking about. And you want this
Right.
range. But with voice skills, it's, well, with any interaction, frankly, website, mobile, or voice, you want to have the sense of like, I know what I'm doing next. I feel confident in
Right.
being able to move through the experience.
Mhm.
So the challenges should be around the ooh, should I open the chest or the door, or ooh, how do I answer this question?
Right.
Not in what do I do now?
Yeah, because if a kid, if anyone hits a hurdle and they don't know how to get around it, and you don't follow up with them and make sure you guide them through that experience, or that it's not intuitive enough that they'll figure it out, you've already lost your audience. Like your skills need to be concise, but also descriptive enough so that way they know how to iterate through the interactions.
Yeah, you want your navigation separate from your other experiences. So
Right.
one analogy I think of this sometimes is, you know, if you have a city, you have roads and street signs and
Right.
street lights and sidewalks and dotted lines, you know, down the road. There's this common language that just works throughout the experience, and you can move around that city. But if you go into any one store, every one is very unique and different and has its own purpose and its own style and layout. And that's sort of like how you want to design your skill, where you have navigational aids, but then
Right.
also bursts of experiences which are really creative and different and
Mhm.
unique. Okay, so the key thing when building a voice skill with these interactions is to think about your prompts,
Mhm.
reprompts, and then even progressive prompts. So the prompt is what Alexa will say to encourage the child to say the next thing, right? And to get the thing going back and forth. So for example, you might say, what's your favorite animal? I'm coming back to it.
I like the shark. I like sharks.
I love it. Okay, shark. Now, so what could have happened there is, do you remember the first time I said, what's your favorite animal? Cami was like, oh, I don't know,
Yeah,
and
I
she
don't know.
waited.
That's a personal question.
Right, and so what's cool about that is Alexa will wait for 8 seconds for a response. If you don't have one, that's okay. Then you re-prompt.
Right.
And then you would say, hey, do you like sharks? Right? Or you could propose an
Yeah.
example of something that you might want to do.
You could say dog or cat, things like that.
Right? Give them some guidance. So you can have like a, like one of the examples with this sort of pet kind of a thing is you'd say, name 2 characteristics about your favorite dog. Right? And then you might be like,
Characteristics.
what? And then you could say, well, do you like big dogs? Right? And you can, so you can get more specific.
Yeah, big dogs. Yeah.
All right, so that's prompting and re-prompting. And just so you have the flow, the way this works is Alexa will say a prompt, then the child has 8 seconds to respond. If they don't, they get a re-prompt, and then they have 8 more seconds to respond, and then the session's over if they don't respond at that time.
Yeah, and something good to mention at this point is what if they say, I don't know? So it's important to handle cases like that. You know, if they say, I don't know, and then you re-prompt and they say, I don't know again, how will you handle that? Will you just end the session, or will you pick for them? That's something to consider.
Right, yeah. If they say, if you say, do you want to open the drawbridge or do you want to open the chest? I don't know. Well, there could be treasure in the chest. I don't know. You're like, we're open the drawbridge.
Yeah.
Right? And you can just have a default. And then
Let's
you
get this together.
Right.
Let's do this.
Here comes the goblin, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
All right. So the other thing here is progressive prompts. And that's kind of what you were just describing, right?
Right.
You can realize when somebody's working through a problem, it's at the beginning a little more open, still prescriptive. You should always be prescriptive and tell them what you're asking about. But then you might go from tell me 2 characteristics about your favorite pet to do you like big dogs or small dogs, right? So it's getting more prescriptive. Or you could go the reverse direction, which is the first questions could be something like, what do you get when you mix water and dirt? And then later it could be like, what do you get when you mix fire and dirt?
Right.
Right? It's progressively more difficult, so you're upping the level of it.
Yeah, kind of going back to the idea of leveling. Something else that you can do with prompting, kind of especially for kids in this demographic, is let's say I had a multiple choice question or something, which by the way, for kids skills, you should keep their choices to about 3 or less, just because it's easier to remember, and it can be a lot thrown at them at once to have this essentially Sophie's choice. But anyway, something that you can do that's really cool that I've seen is if Alexa says, would you like a big, small, or ginormous dog? Or think about if you'd like a big, small, or ginormous dog, and then she plays a little audio clip to give them time to think. What would you like? And then they can answer. So that kind of gives the user a little bit more time to think about their choice if they need more than 8 seconds. And that's something that you can incorporate into leveling, giving them more time, the easier levels, and less time, the harder levels.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. So basically you're saying the time, you have the prompt, and there's a question, and if they have to answer immediately within that 8 seconds, that's one level. Another is you tee up the prompt, play a little bit of an audio clip, and then give the prompt.
Right.
It gives them more time to think. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay, so ready?
Yes.
The
Yes.
one breath test. So this is all about making sure that you're designing for the ear versus the eye. So when you design for the eye, what you have is paragraphs, and often they have a topic sentence, some supporting points, a concluding sentence, and the way people often handle information like that that's written is they'll skim it. They'll read a little bit, they'll go, or they might not skim, they might read really quickly, and then as they're going, if they get lost, they'll go back and then dive a little deeper to really understand what was going on. In voice, none of those things happen. So you can't really skim, it's coming at you. And you can't go back and revisit. You could say, replay that or tell me that again if you wanted to, I suppose.
Right.
So one of the sort of litmus tests of this is when you type up what Alexa's going to say it out loud, read it to somebody, and try to do it in one breath.
Yeah, you took longer than a breath to explain the one breath test. But TLDL is too long, didn't listen. So if that was too long and you didn't listen, incorporate that idea into your skill.
I love it. See, when I first saw this slide, I thought it was one breath test, like, you know, you like blow in your kid's face, or
Nope, I wouldn't do that.
Like,
Nope.
what?
I
Oh,
wouldn't
that's
do
the
that.
best. That's the reason to have kids. Okay.
Okay.
Not really.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons, I suppose.
The reason is to be able to build an awesome kid skill.
Okay. So let's keep rolling.
Should we take some questions or keep going? Keep going? All right. Cool.
There's one question. Are the slides provided afterwards? There's going to be a white paper that you can all go get, and so you can all check it out. Alrighty. Memorable moments.
Ooh.
So one of the best ways to get a person to come back to your experience is to have them think about it and to talk about it. So a litmus test for me and a really great skill is to say, what are kids talking about on the playground?
Right.
I did this thing, this happened, this is what went on.
Yeah,
And
or you wouldn't believe what Alexa said to me last night. That sort of thing.
Right.
I got her to say poop.
Whoa.
Yeah.
She won't, actually.
Oh. Well. Something else.
So the idea is you've got these memorable moments, and you want to give you want them to be like the nugget of a story that they can take with them and go on their way. And so one way to do this is to think about what are all of the experiences that are going on in the world right now. Like you might have a party related to the time of the month. Like it might be,
Talk Like a Pirate Day.
Yeah, or Valentine's Day or whatever. Yep. And then the other part is, a little bit of surprise. So one way to do that is you're like going through your experience and you're talking. And if you remember, I went through this castle and kind of went and like had the drawbridge open, and it really added a sense of spatial like understanding.
Right. Yeah,
and
painting the picture for its audience.
Yeah. So there's a few ways to do that. One is with sound effects. Another is with speech cons. And so speech cons are ways to make Alexa say things in like a more natural but more excited and exaggerated kind of a way.
So like instead of saying wowza, she says wowza. That
Right.
one's my favorite one.
I like the bum bum bum.
Yeah.
That's a good one too. So maybe talk about like how you're thinking about using positive ones. And
so something that I've kind of been tabling is we have this idea of soft failures for kids. You don't want to discourage them when they're wrong in this skill. You want them to keep going, but you still want that sense of a challenge so it's not something that you can completely discard. So what I was kind of thinking through was taking speech cons and dividing them into your positive and negative experiences. So for example, dun 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 would be negative, like when they did something wrong or got a question wrong or something like that. Something positive would be bazinga, you did it, congrats, let's move on, or something like that. So those things still create a positive experience even if it's like a negative route into your skill, and it can still be fun.
Right, and you always want to keep that sense of challenge, right? So it's good that they don't always succeed and they have to do a little bit of a grind to get through it. And that's actually an important part of creating moments is, you're plugging through it, you're plugging through it, doing the stuff, and then all of a sudden, yes, I succeed.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, I didn't. And so, and adding that sense of drama, right? It's like the tension is building.
It's drama, but it's also encouraging to keep going.
Right, exactly. And sometimes you'll see a lot of times that kids will just try to fail to see how it responds when you fail, just because that itself is fun.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
What's she gonna say now?
Yeah, she's like, oh, bummer.
Oh,
Then, like,
bummer.
the kid can like mimic her in a way. Yeah.
That's so good. How does Alexa handle pronunciation since kids' speech may not be clear? Okay, so there's a couple points on that one. We talked a little bit earlier about entity resolution.
Right.
So let's say, for example, the obvious case here is if we're doing that pet example and I want to have a big dog, and my database or my API or whatever uses big as the canonical term for big. But a kid might say large or ginormous or those things. But they might also say, I can't think of let's see.
Wumbo.
Yeah, they might.
Big.
They might say. I've never heard that one. Okay, so let's take that one. Let's say they said wumbo. So what you could do is you would get that as a slot value, and it would give you an entity resolution of no match because we didn't think of wumbo to put in the thing. And then you could be like logging all the things that give you a no match, and you can say wumbo. What was that? And you go, oh, okay, they mean large, and then you add that as a synonym. So then from there forward, wumbo becomes something that can work.
Right.
Or if they say, instead of large, they say charge. You know,
Right,
it sounds
yeah.
like charge. And so you could add charge as a synonym for big, and then you can get it in there too. So really, I think what you would do is you would use that entity resolution and getting those slot values, watching which ones are coming back as a no match,
Right.
and then you can instrument that and go update your stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of a good thing to incorporate anyway, because kids can mix up, for example, what and who. So they'd say, who is your name versus what is your name. So kind of thinking about how kids speak and incorporating that into your skill is always like a good move.
Yep. Another one here, does Alexa understand numbers and math? Yeah. So out of the box, you can do things like, the example here is 5 + 3 = 8. So that just sort of worked. Like here, Alexa, what's 5 + 3?
The sum of 5 and 3 is 8.
Okay. But you can also, in your skill, have a slot. These are the variables. And the slot could be an Amazon.number, so that you can get back the numbers. And then you can do all sorts of things with that, and you can start to do other challenges.
But notice when Paul said, what's 5 + 3, she said the sum of 5 and 3. So if you also said, Alexa, what's the sum of 5 and 3, it would still work.
Right.
So plus resolves to sum in that case.
That's right. That's right. And then another question: where do I find those bazinga and ding 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 sound effects? It's speech cons. So when you get the white paper for this, there'll be a link to all of these slides with all of the points we're talking about. But if you search for Amazon Alexa speech cons, you'll see the list of all the speech cons. Okay. A few more questions. There's a lot of interesting questions coming in here right now.
Yeah.
Do you recommend making leveling up or down explicit to kids, or handle it behind the scenes based on streaks of right or wrong answers?
So leveling can kind of happen in multiple ways. If you think about it in terms of easy, medium, hard, you know, you have those levels essentially, but there are sub-levels within that, you know, so there are 10 easy levels within the easy stage in a sense. So kind of keeping that component hidden is probably important, but you want the kids to have a sense of achievement. So I think telling them like, you leveled up or something like that is important.
Yeah. I like the notion that you have both an automatic system and a explicit system.
Right.
Right. So kind of like you're saying, like where as they progress through, they can sort of auto level up and down a little bit, but they can also just say, put me on epic mode. Right. And they're like, oh, it's super hard now. I think that's totally fine. And now that's an example where, you know, if nobody ever uses switch mode, like make it easy mode or make it hard mode, that's totally fine. They should have a completely successful experience with
Just
the skill.
as enriching.
But if they try it, that's kind of a neat thing to have supported. So they go, okay, you're on hard mode.
Right.
It's like a little delighter. That's another example of those moments. Here's another one. If your skill has a lot of back and forth and 8 seconds isn't enough time to respond, is there a way to avoid Alexa, tell my skill every step? So a lot of back and forth is awesome, and that can go indefinitely. There's no time limit on that. If you want to give people more time to respond, the 8 seconds is fixed. That's how it is. But Cammy's suggestion earlier was a pretty good one, where you basically say, here's how it would go. I'll pretend I'm Alexa. You would say, all right, think about 2 characteristics from your favorite dog. Okay, what are your 2 characteristics?
Soft and cuddly.
So you see, you gave them time to think a little bit during the music, and then they knew that they were thinking time during the music, and then you give them the actual prompt right at the end, and that can give you a little more time.
Yeah, and the audio that you incorporate, I think, can be up to 90 seconds. Granted, you don't want to give them that much time to think, but you can have a little leeway with that. So again, going back to leveling, if when they get to hard mode, you only give them 1 second versus easy mode, you give them 10, that's something that you can also incorporate.
Cool. Cool. All right, let's go on the next slide. We'll come back to these questions. Yeah, there's a bunch here. We'll keep going on them. We'll have time. All right. Another thing about voice is to make sure you add variety to your responses. So let's go back to web or mobile when you're designing for that. In that world, you want to teach the people how to use your skill, and then you want to be very consistent, right? So you want to have the same color palette, the same information architecture and organization, the same names on the buttons, all that stuff. So you don't have to relearn it every time.
Right.
You effectively learn it once, and then you're on your way. With voice, you could say all sorts of things. So in that mobile app, if I have an OK button, when I click the OK button, it does the OK function. And so I'm sort of my code is kind of backed up by the label of my button. And the customer has the burden of thinking, well, is OK what I want? Is that the closest fit? So they're looking at everything on the screen going, this is the best fit for me, so I guess I'll click it. In voice, they might say all sorts of things.
Alrighty.
Roger, right? Yeah.
Let's go.
And so what that is you have an utterance, and that utterance gets resolved to an intent.
Right.
So your job is to train the natural language engine with a variety of utterances. The natural language understanding engine from Alexa will transform that into an OK intent, and then your code can go off and handle the OK intent.
Right.
So you want to have a variety. And then that's supporting what the customer says, what children say. The other way is to have Alexa say a variety of things. So when you open your skill, she might say, welcome to the drawbridge game. I guess you could say, welcome back, or hey, something new happened.
Hey, adventure.
Yeah, hey, adventure, that's cool. So the idea is to keep it variety, have a little bit of variety, like people would. Otherwise, you end up with this very robotic kind of experience.
Well, and that you can take it a step further. When they first open your skill, you might want to include instructions on how to use it, but over time, they're going to just gloss over essentially when they hear those instructions. So it would be good to kind of tuck those away somewhere else so they're still within your skill, but not right there when you first open it.
Right, right. So you tell more the first time, and you help, right?
Right.
You ask for help, and then it starts to come back.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great example. All right. So what's the next one here? I didn't know this slide was in here.
Haha.
It's an Easter egg.
This is an Easter egg.
All right. So Easter eggs, the idea of an Easter egg is you don't really know it's there, and you find it, and it's this little bit of joy, right? And so it's been in the software industry for a long time to have these sort of extra features and capabilities. Voice lends itself really well to it because you can just try saying things and see what comes back. So I think the idea of adding a little extra flavor, a little extra interesting tidbits would be cool. So in that castle example, you might say, would you like to open the chest or open the drawbridge? And you could say, climb the wall. And it's like, okay, spider monkey. And you start going up the wall, and you're like doing your thing, right?
Well, and this is the stuff that they'll bring to the playground and want to talk about. Oh, did you find this in the skill? Oh, you should go back and check it out.
Right.
It's amazing, that sort of thing.
There was an antlion.
Yeah.
I think they would love that. You don't think they would? Everybody's like, what's that? I never saw Star Wars. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right, so that's Easter eggs.
Cool.
All righty. So here's what we've talked about so far. First one is considering the age range, right? 3-year-old versus an 8-year-old versus a 13-year-old are all pretty different. And so in having the ability for your skill to sort of be flexible around those different ages, or targeting your skill in such a way that it's really clear that this is for, you know, like animal sounds is for a younger age group and bird sounds is for an older age group, and then having these leveling concepts. Fostering curiosity, this is all about letting people understand or act the way they want to act, say what they say, use their words, and that kind of thing. That's where we got into entity resolution and slots and dialogue management. Guiding kids through the interactions, that's where we are being prescriptive about what we want from the person in the dialogue and in the actions, and making sure that what to do is very clear.
Progressive prompting, reprompting, that sort of thing.
Yep. And then the moments, these memorable moments are the things that you can cling to and go build a story. They're the seed of a story that you can go, that will make you want to come back day after day, or will make you want to tell your friends about it and sort of keep coming back. Delivering fresh content is really critical. So let's say we have a skill and it's awesome. Like it's just really, really great. It's this, I don't know, maybe it's a quiz thing, or maybe it's telling you cool facts or something like that. And you come back and you're like there every day. You're like, I love it, I love it, I love it. And then on day 4, it starts telling you the same questions again. For the same facts.
Repetitive, no.
Wah, wah, right? And so that's the moment when your most loyal customers
We'll leave.
they leave, and they might even leave a negative review saying, I used to love this, but now it's the same stuff every time, and that's really a bummer, right? So fresh content. Think about how you have a long life with your content.
Yeah, normally people don't go for redesigns as much, especially with mobile and web. They think, oh, redesign, no, I hate it. But if you and I had the same conversation every day, multiple times, it's no fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Even those movies that repeat the same day over and over again, they don't do it the same. They always give you like a different little excerpt of it.
It's something that you have to find, an Easter egg.
Oh, all right. All right, so here's a skill that's pretty interesting. This one's called Tricky Genie. And it's a skill where they set up a scenario for you. And you have the scenario, and then what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to figure out what's the best next step. So it'll give you these 3 options. And it's pretty cool because it'll give you 3 options in like a mystery box. You don't actually know what's in the options. And you're like, do you want option 1 or 2 or 3? And you're like, I'll take 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then
total guess the first time.
Total guess, right? And then it opens up option 3, and it says what it is. And it's like, in the example, in one example I saw was, hey, we're going on a camping trip, and your air mattress runs out of air.
Or yeah, it pops or something.
Right, right. And so then you open up box number 3, and it's like, hey, what you got was this really cool luxury van, and it's got all the camping gear in it, and
video games,
video
and
games.
a TV,
it's better than a hotel. And then you open up it's like, do you want to keep that box, or do you want to open 1 or 2?
Yeah.
And so you're like, oh, I got to make this decision.
What
Like,
do I
is this the
choose?
best choice for you or not? And then you open up another one, and then it's like, well, what you get in here is you got, I don't remember what it was, like round trip to Hawaii.
Yeah,
you're doing your thing.
something like that.
And
And then it asks, is this your best option, or do you want to open the last one?
right, and so you're like, oh, I got to open the last one. So you open the last one, and it's hammocks, right? And you're like, oh, there's hammocks, whatever. And then you have to say which one is the best option for that scenario, and so the kid has to kind of choose. And then it'll come back and it'll give you rationale for why each one was a good option. So first of all, there's a sense of depth to it, right? Because that is a minute and a half long kind of back and forth experience with some thinking and all that. And so that's kind of nice that there's a little bit of depth to it. Not too long to be,
Boring.
yeah, to where it lose you, but yet short enough,
Well, and throughout the skill, it incorporates audio, right? So when it was the camping trip, you kind of felt a sense of eeriness because you were outside. And oh no, now my mattress is popped. What do I do? And then this genie appears, and there's a sound effect behind that. So
That's
it's
right.
engaging, even though it's a long story, essentially.
And so, by the way, in that one, it was hammocks was the right answer.
Hammocks was the right answer.
I went for the van. I'm like, I want to get in the van. I want to go watch TV.
Then you don't get to enjoy camping and being outside.
I know. It didn't solve the problem most directly. So the other part is they have a lot of those stories. So every time you come back to it, there's another story. And they're just cranking in more and more pieces. So I think that that's an example where content is really making it exciting and good, and a lot of content is what keeps you coming back all the time.
Yeah, because in this skill, if you had the same story over and over, it would be difficult. Something cool that I also like to mess around with is 20 questions, and it's something my cousins and I like to play. It's great because if you aren't familiar with the game, you ask Alexa, or she asks you 20 questions to figure out what you're thinking of, and then by the end she gets it. And it's amazing, and it works, and it blows my mind every time. But it's awesome because it's you creating the content, the fresh content, and she's kind of trying to gather the information from you to find out the answer,
Right.
which is an awesome experience. And again, piques your imagination a little bit. How can I trick Alexa this time?
That's right. Every single time it's different, right? Even if you have the same thing in mind, the questions Alexa asks you are a little bit different. So it's got this variety every single time, which is pretty cool.
And it's interesting to see what types of questions she asks you too, and how those are different every time.
A couple questions from the stream. Is this recorded? Yes, it is recorded. And there's a PDF that you'll be able to get, and you can download and see all the stuff
Yeah,
in
on
here.
the dev posts.
Is there an optimum min-max length of time a skill should engage with kids? I don't know. Let's figure that out. I think that's something that we as a community should figure out.
Yeah.
I think that you want the individual interactions, the turns of the dialogue to be relatively quick and snappy. That one breath rule.
Yeah, I think it's kind of different per skill, right? Because if you're creating an interactive story versus a bedtime story you kind of want it to be a little longer, softer, so that way they're quiet. But with an interactive story, you want those quick turns, so that way they don't lose focus and they stay engaged.
Yep. Another one, is there a built-in CMS system for updating content while the skill is live? There's a couple things I've seen people do. One is you have a database and you're updating fields in the database.
A lot of people use DynamoDB. It's really great and easy to use.
Super simple, simple key value pairs. I've also seen people build a web page on top of the database so that you don't actually have to go in and go through the actual database and update it. You just go through the web page and add new stuff to it. So usually that's the case when you have two people or several people on the team. One's the developer who's thinking about the coding in the database, and the other is the content producer.
Right.
If those two people are the same, they often just type it straight in the database.
Right.
But you want to separate your content from your code so that you can update it pretty easily.
Without having to go in and update your actual code. And we actually have a cookbook with a lot of quick go-to items like this that you can incorporate. It's essentially just helper functions that you should put in your skill that we've seen a lot of people use and we want you to have access to. And it's logic that you don't have to change, but we just make it available for you, and that's on our GitHub.
Yeah, so I'm going to put that I'll send that to everybody, the link to the cookbook. So you can look through there. There's an example in there where we've got this kind of thing, so you can look at it.
Right.
Is there a list of existing skills and what they do? Yeah, if you go to the skill store, so you basically go into your app, go to alexa.amazon.com or go into your mobile app. You can hit skills and you can see all the different
yeah, and
stuff.
that's especially great for when you're coming up with an idea. You know, we were talking about animal skills. There's so many animal skills, but how do you make yours unique? You should go to the skill store and see what's already out there.
How do you monetize skills? So there's a couple ways that we support monetization right now. I mean, one, we're talking about there's this contest with $250,000 prize.
Incredible.
So, okay, there's
1,000 winners. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one. But the other is we have this Dev Rewards program. So it's I'll type it into the chat here. It's alexa.design/Dev Rewards. .design/Dev Rewards. And what that does is you can go there, and if you build a really engaging skill that's in one of these 7 categories, including games and a few others, you will get paid just because your skill is very engaging. So yeah, there's a few ways you can do it. Can I ask somebody personal info like name, class, location, etc. from kids? So here's you can't ask personally identifiable information. So you should go look at COPPA rules. It's COPPA.
Yeah, take the time to look through that because it will really help you decide, you know, what things to include in your skill versus not, and might change your trajectory.
That's right. So you want to keep it anonymous for sure.
Yeah.
Now it's okay if you have like, what's your gamer tag, right? And you make up a fun name so you can say player 1, player 2, and like Antlion Supreme and polka dotted penguin, right? And we're like playing our game. That's totally cool. You just want to keep it, you know.
Yeah, especially for, I think, games that have teams or different sides. You can use, you know, colors. We have the built-in color slot, or animals, things like that. And then that's kind of fun for kids because they appropriate that color. You know, they could dress up as that color whenever they use this skill after dinner or whatever.
Cool. All right.
Let's keep moving.
Number 6.
Yes.
So polishing your name and description. Now, we sort of cheated. This isn't really a kids-focused thing.
It's kind of a just general like rule
everything.
you always have to follow. Yeah.
Right. This is an everything thing. It's really important to think about your skill name. A lot of times, particularly if you're coming from a developer-biased focus, you think about your skill name as kind of like a file name. You know, boop, 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 put my file name down. But it doesn't really flow into the experience, and your skill name and the invocation name in particular are really important parts of the whole experience. And so I've seen a lot of times where people will start building their skill, and then they get to the end where they're testing it, and they're like, I don't know how to start it. And
So you can interact with it.
they
Yeah.
forgot their name, right? And so,
Or it's too long to say or complex to say.
right, or they don't put spaces in it, like you would say as a, you know.
With underscores, yeah.
So here's how it works. Like in this particular case, the skill is bedtime stories. So there's a wake word, Alexa. So that's what gets Alexa to start listening. She's not listening at all until you say Alexa. And then there's this launch word. And the launch word can be a variety of things. It could be open, play, begin, start, launch, or it could be nothing at all, right? And then you have your invocation name, bedtime stories. And that's how you would get into your experience. So you want that to be a part of your thing. Now, let's say our game was called Castle Adventure, since we started that scenario in the beginning. I could say, Alexa, tell Castle Adventure to get on the horse. And so what I did there was I had Alexa, which is the wake word. I had tell, which was the launch word, and then Castle Adventures was the invocation name. So that got into the skill, and I'm like, to get on the horse and start riding, and that was my utterance.
Right.
And so
The action.
the action. So I basically went deep into the skill and started it right away. So you can start your skill in a lot of different places. So you want to make sure that those sentences and phrases make a lot of sense.
And you should say them out loud. You know, try it with your friends or with younger siblings. Just have them speak through your dialogue that you make, so that way you can tell what's easy for them to say or what's too difficult, things of the like. And it should be noted that your invocation name doesn't have to be the same as your skill name. Those are actually two different fields that you specify, but the invocation name is what they say in order to launch your skill, which is important.
Right. The name is what you see in the skill store.
Right, yeah.
And the invocation name is what you use to
What
say.
we use to interact. Yeah, so going back to looking at the different skills that we have, you should look at the skills and see especially the naming conventions too. You want to come up with something unique, but something that's also easy to remember, easy to say. So just see what's out there, and make sure, again, you're not creating repetitive skills.
Yep. Can we add skills for comics? Of course you can.
Yeah.
You can do all sorts of stuff. Now, you have to be really careful here, because if you don't own the intellectual property, then you can't really use that intellectual property.
Right.
So if you're talking about comics that are your own comics, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Or if you're making a fan thing off of the comics, and you say like the unofficial Scooby-Doo, which would be my favorite. Is that a comic? No, it's an cartoon?
It's a cartoon,
Okay,
yeah.
it works. Anyway, the point is you have to say unofficial or the fan version of it.
Specify that.
Right. What we want to make sure is that nobody thinks that it's the actual official thing. And you never want to fool customers, right? So that's why you have to be really explicit. So generally, just avoid anything that's not your intellectual property. And then with comics, you can have the voice experience and all that, but you could also
have the visual component.
show stuff on the Echo Show or things like that.
It's important to note, I think, especially with kids skills, a lot of them will see a screen and kind of tend to it because they're already so familiar with it. But you want to make sure that the screen is not your crutch. It's still always voice first.
Yeah, I have a litmus test for that. So with mobile or with web, your screen is everything, right? You are going to effectively create an experience, give them a screen, and the person has to be able to use your entire experience based on that screen without you ever interacting. With a conversation, your screen is more like notes. So let's say you and I are inventing something, and we're talking about it, and you're like, I don't get what you're saying. And I would write it down on a napkin. I'm like drawing a picture of it, and I show it to you, oh yeah, and you draw something, we go back and forth. Now if I gave you that napkin without ever having the conversation with you, you'd be like, what is this?
What is this garbage?
Right, what is this? But as like a memento of the conversation, as a extra information, a little more clarity, that's great. So like with Echo and Echo Show, if you say, here are some movie choices, and you say out loud one or two choices, but on the screen you show 3 or 4, and maybe show the ratings, and you show where they're
Actors.
at in the time. Right. There's a little extra information, so you can use it. You don't need that.
But
right?
it's just an extra, like, delightful experience.
Yeah. All right. So we got to get rolling.
Yeah.
We're going to run out of time. All right. So let's talk about the parents.
Yes.
So the reason this all works is because we have verified parental consent. It's really important that the parents know what the kids are doing, what's happening. So what you do when you build your skill, and especially if you want one that's directed towards children, there's
And for this competition.
Yep, that's right. So what you would do is after you're done building your skill, you get there, you test it, you do all your stuff, everything's working, then you go through this publishing process. So see how you're going down these check marks, these green check marks, and you get to the publishing state. At the very end of that, there's is this skill directed to, or does it target children under the age of 13? So that's where you would say yes.
Right. This is under privacy, actually. Privacy and compliance.
Yeah. Is a part. Yeah. You're right.
It's a part of publishing, but you're right.
Okay, and then that's where you can click on the link to read more about COPA and see what all the requirements you have to adhere to and so forth. And then what happens is when the child goes to enable
the
your
skill.
skill, this screen shows up in the Alexa skill app. So you would say, the parent would see, hey, Tricky Genie, to use this kid skill, a parent has to give permission, and you would click on you would tap on the get permission, and then you go through this flow, and there's this parental consent, and they go through and they say, I agree.
Right.
So this is the experience for parents to give permission, so that they know that kids are using this device and using these skills.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. So let's do a quick recap of, and we're gonna keep going through questions right up till the end. So $250,000 in cash and prizes,
It's
1,000
insane.
participants.
Yeah.
The major deadline you need to think about is January 10th.
Yes.
So we need to get all the skills in by January 10th.
It's a lot of time, and it's enough time.
Yep.
Mhm.
And the important bit there, or the thing that happens then, is they're going to go through an eligibility review,
Okay.
or through the rest of January. So they go through that, and then they're going to announce 20 finalists.
Okay.
And there's this panel of judges and all that kind of stuff. So, and then between January 30th and mid-February, February 20th, then we're going to go see what's happening and and pick the winners.
Exciting. And all that stuff is at that alexa.design/challenge. It's your one-stop shop for all this information about this skills challenge.
Yeah, there's a bunch of resources there, all sorts of things to help you with it.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to answer questions. In a few minutes, when this webinar is over, we're going to switch over to Twitch TV.
Yes.
So it's twitch.tv/Amazon Alexa. And it's actually streaming there live now.
Yeah, and we're going to take all of the components we talked about and kind of build a skill together.
Why don't you describe that skill real quick, and I'll look through the
Yeah,
questions.
so the skill I want to build, I'm currently calling Mixmaster, and essentially what it will do is it will say to the kid, what does water and dirt make? And then it will give the kid a chance to think, and then the kid will say mud. And Alexa will say, wowza, that's awesome, you got the answer right. Now do you want to play in the scene? And if the kid says yes, she'll paint the picture and say, oh, we're in a sticky, stinky swamp. You have 5 minutes to get out of the swamp. And then the kid can interact with the room and things like that. So that's the skill we're going to build. We're going to incorporate leveling, progressive prompting, audio, speech cons, all that good stuff. So that's going to be on Twitch in a couple of minutes.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Can I add jokes as a skill for kids? Yeah,
Yes,
sure.
Jokes are awesome.
Jokes are good. What if two skills have the same invocation name? Well, you would enable one of them, and the one that the customer enables, use it. That's probably the reason I would say don't do animal sounds.
Right.
There's a lot of people that have animal sounds already out there.
Mhm.
I would think of something a little more interesting.
Yeah, but still, it has to be a name that they'll remember.
But yeah, there can be multiple invocation names.
You can
for
have
sure.
multiple animal skills on your device, but it's a question of which one is enabled right now, and that's the one she will direct to.
Do we have access to the kids' responses? No, there's no keeping track of all that kind of stuff. So what really happens is you get the intent, and you get any slot values.
Right.
So in that sense, you can tell things like if they were saying wooba for large or whatever that was, wumba, then you could collect that and you could add it to your large file. Can you use other voices? You can use Polly, and so what you can do with Polly is you can go out and you can type in phrases. It'll give you an audio clip with a different
cool.
voice, and then you can include that audio clip
I didn't know that was a thing.
into Alexa.
That's awesome. Yeah, but for Alexa's actual dialogue, no, it's just her voice.
Right. Now you can do things like change her pitch,
Mhm.
change her prosody, which is the speed.
She can whisper.
She can whisper,
Mhm.
do all the speech cons and so forth.
Mhm.
What kind of media will the show and spot accept? So yeah, it's videos and images, and then there's a series of templates that you can
Right.
fill out with text and stuff like that, and it'll show up on the screen.
Yeah, if you look at our design guide right now, alexa.design/guide, and go to what Alexa says or how Alexa responds, I think is what it is, you can see the different templates that the show currently has.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. We've got a bunch of questions here, and so what we're going to do is we're going to take all these questions and we'll wrap them up and we'll put them on the blog post
Yes.
later on. So come on back, and we'll also be on the Twitch channel right now, and so we can answer more questions as we go there. And I think as I'm looking through a lot of these, we're going to answer them as you go to build your skill.
Right,
there's a lot of
yeah, so
questions.
everybody go to Twitch. We'll address a lot of these questions there, but a lot of them will be on the blog, so keep watching the blog too.
Awesome. And I'm at Paul Cutzinger on Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn, however you like to connect to people. I'd love to keep the conversation going.
Yes, I'm at CWillieCS, Twitter, GitHub, I'm Cami Williams. Yeah, so again, follow us, tweet at us. We will be watching it and answering your questions.
Yes, the Twitch session will be recorded as well.
Yes.
And the PDF will get shared. Yep, you'll get it in mail.
Great.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you, Paul and Cami. That was great. And thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar, Building Stellar Kid Skills. As Paul and Cami mentioned, you can enter the Alexa Skills Challenge for your chance to win your share of $250,000 in total cash and prizes. If you have any questions on the contest, please go to alexa.design/challenge. There you can also find the contest rules, including how participation impacts your eligibility for other Alexa developer programs. And as we mentioned before, we will email you the recording and the PDF guide that we mentioned. And before we close, I'd like to remind you that once you leave the webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation. Please take just 30 seconds to send us your feedback. You will receive a follow-up email, as I mentioned, in the next day or two with all the resources we mentioned. Thank you so much, and please join us over on Twitch for the second bonus hour for on-the-fly skill building at twitch.tv/Amazon Alexa.
Hi, everyone. Except for if you're on Twitch. Hi.